Land, labor, knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, the knowledge is the big one.
I
It's
think
like,
it is. I think it's the biggest. I mean, I think it just takes so many skills to be able to super successfully produce a crop. Like you have to have the mechanic to keep the machines going. You have to have the agronomist that's grown the crop. You know, I mean, it's just uh, one thing leads to another, and for the industry to be able to move successfully, you have to have guys with each of these skill sets, or guys with multiple skill sets. Here we go, episode 6, and if you haven't been listening to us, we're just talking about agriculture topics and just random thoughts too, just
yeah,
interesting thoughts. But today we're going to be talking about farm labor and the lack thereof in the rural communities, and just uh, other topics similar to that.
yeah. I think I don't. I was talking to a buddy about this probably 2 months ago now. We were talking about how there is a very large migration towards cities, and he was arguing with me, saying, "No, I feel like since COVID, everyone's moved out back to the country," which is true. A bunch of people did move back out to the country. Uh, in 2020 and 2021, they all were like, I want to get away from the city. I want to start my own farm homestead, all this different thing. And so a bunch of people did go and do that. Um, with that said, I still think there's a larger population shift towards the city, and it's not, at least from what I've seen in all the statistics and in all of my travels, it's not stopping anytime soon.
No,
The small towns who are surviving right now are the ones who are turning into cities.
that's right. It looks like to me, you just look at our small town here, and every year it seems we lose some families to, Nashville or Owensboro or Bowling Green, one of the regional cities around us. Mm-hmm. So, and it's not slowing down. It doesn't seem like they go to those. I mean, there's great jobs on the edge of those cities like Amazon, Facebook, Samsung,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to these places, and you can't blame them. I mean, there isn't a lot of opportunity here, um, and so they go to those regional cities, and they live inside of them, and then maybe work right outside of them or whatever. But
Yeah. Yeah, and it's posing a crisis for rural communities, but also farm operations, right?
it for sure. I mean, it's difficult for us to find labor. Um, it's and I mean, it it's not a you know the type of farming we're in personally is row crop farming. So is there a lot of mechanical stuff that has to be done, and like manual labor? Yes, but I mean it is not like we're out there picking vegetable crops either.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times if we're working on something, we're in a covered building, where the sun's not shining directly on us. Sometimes we're hot, or a lot of times we're hot during the summer. But I mean, I don't feel like it's a job that is like, I've cut tobacco in my life, and top tobacco. It's nothing like that. So it's jobs that are, yes, they're hard, but they're not like undoable jobs. So even with uh, the type of farming we're in, it's difficult to find somebody that can even stand to be uncomfortable for even a small amount of time. So people love comfort, and farming's not comfortable a lot of times. So it's challenging, and it's hard, and it's tedious and hot, and so it's not desirable, I guess. The way people look at it now, that people love comfort, and it's not comfortable. So I don't feel like it's the most challenging thing I personally have ever done, but
You also grew up farming, so the hardest thing you've ever done is probably a little harder than most people who have never farmed before.
yeah, I mean, farming is a challenging occupation, but I'm just saying there is a lot more challenging things out there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still difficult to find somebody to do the jobs we do each and every day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and it's not getting easier. I think I was saying before we had all these podcast recording troubles, like we've got, it's like 50% of farmers in the U.S. are above 55 and are supposed to retire in the next decade or two, or will die trying.
that's staggering to me.
Yeah, like 50% of the U.S.'s farm population is set to age out. That's a lot of people, and a
It
lot of
is.
people growing your food who are moving out of the industry, and not all of them have people taking over for them.
And there's a lot of knowledge that passes down there too. Like not only with the actual farmer, the farm hands and farm laborers that are on that farm have a lot of knowledge in growing crops. I mean, a lot of those guys may not know the exact way the business works on the business side with the finance and stuff, but you can't tell me that those guys don't know how to go out there and grow that crop.
Mm-hmm.
And that knowledge is not easily found.
Yeah.
We need people learning this occupation. We need the farm laborers. We need the, you know, the operators, the mechanics. There's so much that goes into it. So
Mm-hmm.
many skills, so many craftsman skills that go into it. And without people learning it, it's there's already a small amount of people doing it right now. It's mind blowing to me to think that in less than 10 years that we'll lose that many of just a few people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of people who have never written anything down, or it's always been in their head, and their dad just told them how to do it,
Yeah.
50 years ago. It's like, hey, this is how you do this thing. Oh, hey, by the way, this is where our field ends and the next guy starts. Like, what happens when all those guys are like, wait, where's the field boundary end? Or like parts of, tractors or things like that got hidden somewhere along, and that's already a problem. I mean, the farm I worked on, you're just finding stuff all over the place, and like, oh yeah, dad left that there 50 years ago, and we just haven't picked it up since. It's like, probably with a purpose, and there's never went anywhere. There's so much stuff out there that there's no record of whatsoever, because farming is very busy. If you're in the middle of a field, something happens, or you find something, you're like, oh, blah blah blah, this, like, there's just no records of things like that. Like, it's not like you can just stick a guy down in a class, say, hey, here's how you work on this farm, here's how you know everything. It's like, you can't teach that in a class.
No. And we were just talking about, like on the last podcast, like dryland farming in that western area, where they're receiving 20 inches of rainfall. Those guys have a process, where they're able to grow a crop with very, in desert-like conditions. You just can't, like me being from the Midwest, I couldn't go out there and successfully grow a crop. And I don't think a lot of people realize this. Like, I could, could I eventually? Yes. But am I going to go out there the first year and be as successful as, as some of these guys that have been doing it for the last 50, and their dad was doing it before that, and their granddad was before that? They all have processes, And you're right, if that stuff's not recorded or written down or taught, it's very difficult for somebody to fall right into that and produce the amount of grain that farm was producing. I think a lot of people forget that. It's like, will the market eventually move to that level of supply? Yeah, but it's going to take a little time, because, each farm has a process and a way. It was the reason they're still surviving is because they had a process that was successful,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes time for others to fill that void of that farm once it's retired or it's sold or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and the people who do know typically are. This is an issue that I see talked about all the time online, and it's kind of annoying to see so often. But there's so many, like, the amount of kids who want to come back to the farm these days is super low. There's not a lot of kids who are like, yeah, I want to come back and run the farm that's been in my family. So we're seeing an era where we've got 100-year-old farms that are being broken up into different parcels and given to the different kids and getting sold off, and maybe some of them keep it, or maybe some of them just rent it out. But we see land across the board get shifting hands a lot and moving to either larger landowners or just part-time farmers, or mostly people wanting to sell it because it's a good time to be in farmland right now.
Yeah. And you get a lot of urbanization now too. I saw where, I don't know how, it's amazing to me. Like, I think it was a lot of land transitioning every hour in America to houses and industrial type plots out of agriculture. So we're losing a lot of land to urbanization, and urban spread and industrial and commercial, industry. And then we're also going to be losing knowledge. So, and we still have to produce more food, as the population grows. So
let's
it's
see.
going to be a challenge.
So already we're 10 minutes in. We've got labor crisis. We've got a land crisis. What else do we have? We have a land crisis. What was the other one? Why am I? Labor crisis, land crisis,
And knowledge crisis.
knowledge crisis. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was the one. Yeah, land, labor, knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. The knowledge is the big one.
I think it is. I think it's the biggest, I mean, I think as people, like, it just takes so many skills to be able to super successfully produce a crop, like you have to have the mechanic to keep the machines going. You have to have the agronomist that's grown the crop, I mean, it's just, one thing leads to another, and for the industry to be able to move successfully, you have to have guys with each of these skill sets, or guys with multiple skill sets, and it's already a challenge now. And as people continue to move away from the rural areas and away from those type of jobs, it's even going to be more of a challenge. Just like the construction industry facing, like the amount of craftsmen is just waning, and the amount of people wanting to do those jobs is waning as well. So
Yeah, and those are the people who do know how to do it these days are super hard to come by.
Yeah.
I mean, they're super hard to come by, and if they know anything, they probably know how to make money off of it too. I mean, in an age where it's hard to be a good mechanic, and with how fancy things are, it's like paying a mechanic to do things these days is expensive, or it takes a year for anything to get done because they're working on so many different projects.
they're just swamped. They're
Yeah.
totally covered up. And I think that's the way it is with any skilled trade right now, is because as those, there's less and less skilled craftsmen, but there's more and more need for skilled craftsmen, and then as the supply wanes, and everybody loads the skilled craftsmen up with everything, everybody's in need of one. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they just suffer burnout, it's,
Yeah, it's a very, I don't say scary. It's going to be a very interesting dynamic that's going to play out in the next few years, because people, I know quite a few guys who run excavation companies, construction companies. Who they all want to work for them? Farm kids, because farm kids are the ones who grew up knowing how to do a billion different things, and you can just say go do this, and they're not going to call you. They're just going to figure it out, and if something goes wrong, they're still going to figure it out. We don't, the kids who need to be on the farm are getting way higher job offers.
Right.
And, you can make more money in pretty much any other industry other than agriculture these days, especially if you know how to do things. Some farm kids are a great transition to foreman in an excavation company, because they're going to show that, like, oh, you know how to operate equipment, you think with your head, just figure all these skills, and boom, this critical thinker who grew up on the farm now knows how to do all the excavation things and is making $100,000 a year as a foreman in their 20s. And why? Just because they know what they're doing.
Right.
So that knowledge is leaving the farm to go somewhere else. So even then, though, excavation and construction, all that, super huge shortage there. People are still having more people. We're having more people all the time, born every day. So we have a growing population, a shortage in construction, electricians, plumbers, and farmers.
carpenters.
Carpenters. Oh man, yeah. Framing a house is an art. Have you seen those videos on Instagram where, like, someone frames a house and they, like, blow over?
Yeah, there's an art to all these things.
Yeah, you don't just put a house up.
No,
Well, you can.
you can't.
I
That doesn't
could,
mean
I could put up a house. Could I put up a house that's as strong as a professional carpenter? Definitely not.
the true master craftsmen out there. There's just not a lot of them left. And this is the thing. Like, if they don't have understudies, if they don't have either sons or people that are like sons to them that have that are learning under their tutelage, that knowledge is lost when they die. And all these, like, farming is not. Not only do we have to have plant knowledge, we have to have all those skilled trade knowledge too. So, as these men get older, they need people to follow them up and learn their skill set that their dads and granddads and bosses taught them. It's important. If you're a young kid out there listening and like, what am I going to do with my life? Hey, go be a skilled craftsman. You're going to make a ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean, is it going to be easy? No. But is it going to be fulfilling? And are you going to be successful? Very.
Yeah.
You know.
And if you don't want to make a bunch of money, come work on a farm. Okay, all that aside, I think we are, that's the other thing. I think farm kids don't want to work on the farm anymore, probably because they've worked for Neil, you might be able to attest to this, and I could be wrong. I know a lot of old farmers. They're kind of cranky.
They are.
And they're not always very fun to work with every day. And if you do things differently, they might not like how you do things differently. So yes, there's a lot of knowledge, but we have a twofold of like, yeah, kids could go work, make a bunch of money. On the other hand, there's a bunch of old people who are really horrible teachers who just do not know how to explain things. I know there's good ones out there, but I know a lot of crotchety old farmers who just don't enjoy explaining things. So not only do we have a younger generation who does want to work, they just, I think there are a lot of young people who don't want to work. They want to be treated well, and they want to make sure that their time is compensated well.
Yeah.
I always see people complain online, no one wants to work, no one wants to work. It's like, I know young people who want to work. I just don't know a lot of young people who want to spend the next 20 years of their life being told how they're messing up all the time.
Right.
That wears on people a lot.
It does.
Especially on a more emotionally in tune generation. The younger people are more in tune with their emotions. They're not as hard and grizzled as someone who might have seen a war has in their life.
Sure. Those the men of my dad's era, the boomers, and the ones that were post, maybe you even call me like that, the Gen X or whatever. I mean, they're hard men, and they do are very, they're grouchy a lot of times, and there's not a lot of tolerance. There's a lot of, I mean, sometimes it's just uncomfortable to be around them, So, yeah, you're right. I think those guys think when they're looking at young labor, they're thinking you have no skill set, so you deserve minimal compensation for your time, Mm-hmm. And I think that's, I think there's a lot of those men that are willing to pay once the skill set's there. Mm-hmm. But it's that transition between when you start with what they see as no skill set. Even if you feel like you have a skill set, they feel like you have no skill set because you don't know how to, wire electrical box, or you don't know how to, you name it, X or whatever. They feel like your value isn't there yet because you haven't learned that trade skill set. Mm-hmm. Once the trade skill set is there, like welding or plumbing or carpentry or I think they feel like then you should be compensated well. Mm-hmm. But it's getting to that point of having your skill set developed enough where they see you as an asset and not more of just a warm body or a liability that's sitting there in front of them.
Yeah, I think there's also, I think a lot of guys think that. A lot of guys don't say that. Because in a normal job, you would be hired for a company and say, in 5 years, you could be here, or in 10 years, you could have this position. If you stick around, you get these benefits. Every year you might get this raise, or every, you get quarterly bonuses if you perform well. In the farm world,
it's not going to be like that.
Do you have two hands? Do you have a CDL? Have you ever driven a tractor before? All right, you're hired.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, and it's not like, are you going to be around? In 5 years you could be doing this, in 10 years you could be doing this. It's
right.
like, no, just get to work. We have so much to do all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be thrown into the fire on the farm, instantly, and and it's one of them things where you're not doing the same thing every day. Every day is a little different. You're going to be learning a different skill set each and every day, and a lot of times you're learning as you go, and that's even for my dad and I, or any other farmer out there too. A lot of times you have a new piece of equipment or a new process that you've never done before, and you're trying to work your way through it. So not only is the apprentice farmhand learning, the actual owner is learning as well, or the boss, you know.
Yeah, as we speak, Neil's dad, who is the most knowledgeable person on the operation, is currently running a brand new combine.
And struggling.
Yeah, he doesn't have it all figured out yet. Like and that's for everyone. Logan could hop in that
Sure.
combine and he could press every button and figure it out in an hour. Like that's the other thing too, is we forget. It's like, okay, these farm kids who might not want to be on the farm, or these young people who don't want to work, might actually be really, really good at what they do, and they could, especially with all this technology and stuff. I worked for a John Deere dealer for a whole 4 days one time. In my interview, they're like, you should take a typing class because you're going to spend a lot of time on the computer typing up reports, looking up codes, doing all these things, because it is so tech heavy now with all these things. New guys do have a hard time hopping in some of these newer machines, or the old guys have a hard time hopping in machines and running them and pressing all the buttons. But kid's been using an iPhone for 10 years. Yeah, he's going to hop in. He's going to be like, oh, this John Deere screen's outdated, but I'll figure it out,
I watch my kids do it. My son is 7, and jump up there and already, find the yield on the computer screen. Dad's like, where's the yield?
It's like, would you mind setting the rest of the settings for me while you're at it?
Daniel 7 knows how to operate iPhones, iPads, John Deere 4640 monitors or whatever.
Yeah.
They are the young generation is so much more in tune with technology than even, me or.
They're also quicker to adopt. They'll see a new thing and say, I know they're all about efficiency too. More than ever, we're about efficiency in farming. The next generation understands, like, the more efficient I can be and the less time I have to spend doing more things. They understand that time and opportunity cost. They don't view their time as just free either. They're very much like, every second that I'm stuck doing this repetitive task that I could automate, they're like, that could be time I could be spending with my friends, or spending time with family, or doing something fun for once other than work. There's that mindset shift. Is like, if I'm going to work, I'm going to try to do it as fast as possible, whether that's laziness or not. There is that aspect of like, let's get the job done so we can go home.
And that's something that's so much different than like my generation and my dad's generation, because it was always looked at, and I think even still now with these generations, is like a badge of honor. The more hours you're out there, the better worker you are.
Oh yeah, and it's the how late you worked last night. How long were you? Yeah. How long were you combining last night? I was like, oh, we worked until 10 until the beans got tough. I was like, well, we were able to go to about 11, and it just goes back and forth. It's like, well, the night before I went till midnight, and it's just the constant one-upping. It's like, why are we bragging about working way too many hours?
All the neighbors that farm next to each other don't want to be the first ones to shut their lights off on their machines. Yep. They're trying to outweight the other guy over there and trying to out-tough him or whatever.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with not wanting to work all the time. I think that's the other thing. American culture is so work heavy, is like, your identity is in what you do, where if you stop working as much, it's like, hey. But I think the next generation is very much like, whether, there's pros and cons to both, of like, you should want to work hard, you should want to do your job well, but you shouldn't let your work just be the only thing you do all the time. I struggle with that. I'm sure you struggle with that. Younger kids are going to struggle way more with the I have to work to live style thing. Yeah. But I also want to be able to like have a life and things,
This is something that, like I can talk about and know quite a bit about personally. Like I was, come out at very early in my career and work myself to burnout. When I got probably in my mid-30s, I'm 45 now, but when I got into my mid-30s, I had like basically taken my whole childhood and my young adult life and spent it at the farm, and got to the point where I was just depressed because I never left. And then I had a young family, and they never saw me and I never saw them. And I had a wife that, I'd got to the point I was just at my wit's end, and I hadn't taken a step back and looked and even tried to adjust my family's life to the farm. I just made them adjust to the way of the farm, and it got me to the point of like a broken person, and I had to relearn how to take and make time valuable, and not just to be there, to also do other things that are important, like take care of your wife and, you know, take care of yourself and your family, and making sure that you do have time to enjoy the fine things of life. Because at the end of the day, you know, does does the farm have to be 100% weed free all the time? I mean, it's nice, but I've learned that I don't have to be there every waking hour of every waking day to run a successful business.
Yeah, and that's a big step, and I think that's probably another reason a lot of people, like, and a lot of kids don't want to come back to the farm. It's like they grew up under guys who's like, you work every single day. Well, yeah, obviously your kids aren't going to want to come back and spend time with their dad who worked their entire childhood away. Like there's real like emotional consequences.
Sure, there is.
To like, you may, and I'm learning this more as I'm starting, I work all the time. I'm on the road 24/7. I'm in that stage where I'm just working all the time, and I only get to see my wife like 4 days out of the week, maybe, if I'm lucky. Like, that's not healthy. And there is understanding that where there's gain, maybe in running the operation better, making more money, doing all these things, your farm's growing, is like, there is a cost to that.
There's consequences in it.
Anyone who tells you that you can start, I was listening to a podcast. Anyone who runs a successful business and tells you work-life balance is really important typically forgets to tell you that for the first 2 to 5 years of their career, they worked like a dog to get there.
Sure.
And I think that's just a fact of life.
Yeah.
If you want to succeed in life, you will have to work really hard.
There's sacrifice, and there's even sacrifice in your latter. Like maybe I'm in my mid-career, but still massive amounts. Like, I rarely do. Like, I spend time with my family, but like my passions, which are like archaeology and hunting, I don't do.
Yeah.
If I do, it's one time or 2 times a year when I leave town to specifically do those things, because I'm not going to get, like, if I'm here, I'm hooked up into the business.
Yeah. When like there's also that shift in the next generation of your generation probably thinks, well, I'll just do that when I retire. And then this generation thinks, I'm not waiting until I'm old and broken to do that. It's like, I want to have fun while I'm young, and it's still enjoyable. I can settle down later. So there's that shift of like, there are people, I'm the same way. I'm like, I just want to get it all out of the way. I'll have fun when I'm older. I'll just work my butt off now, at the opportunity cost of I'm missing a lot of things that are going to be a lot harder to do when I get older now. Like, there is that shift, and that it's almost backwards. It's almost crazy how different past 50 years have been to looking forward to the next 50. But I actually would probably say it's mostly them feeding each other. I'd say the older generation who said, I'll do it later, the kids looked at that and said, I can't live my life like that. Like, why would I want to live my life working myself to the bone for not making any money either? It's like, yeah, a lot of guys did see their dad work themselves to death and probably died working on the farm, and the farm was more or less the same as when they started.
I think my kids would, if they were to come in here right now, they would sit here and tell you that, look, my dad, all he does is work. They tell me that all the time. But I do spend time with them, and I do cut time each day for those kids. But they still look at it and say, all he does is work. And, so there's a sacrifice with any of these things, not only with farming, with any job that you're in, and you can only devote so much time to it, at the end of the day. There's other things more important than that time that you spent, doing whatever task you were doing that day. But it's hard for us to, in the moment, to know how to balance it.
Oh yeah, it's super hard. And I think the fact that you acknowledge that you even make time. I mean, I know guys who, from the time they leave the house in the morning until 10 o'clock at night, they're out working, and their kids might get lucky to see them in the combine cab every once in a while. Yeah. It's one of those things, like, even setting aside the time in the first place is way bigger than I think most people realize, and it doesn't really take that much. But anyways, back onto our main topic, because we got a little, there's a farm labor crisis. There's not a lot of people joining the farm work environment, there's not a lot of good avenues for people to join the farm work environment either. It's usually, oh, you know a guy who works in farming, and that's probably how you've gotten most of your employees. Like you just know someone,
It is.
and they need a job.
Most of those guys grew up with me or my dad.
Yeah,
You know,
but they're not going to be around forever. There will be a time where
No.
they age out, and the farm.
everyone. We have Logan that's young, and Christ is he's a high school kid that mows for us, and he does farm labor too. When
He's going to be very excited that he got shouted out.
when he's not at school or whatever. But we've really only got two young guys. Everybody else is as old as I am or older. And you got two, Dad and Homer, that are on the very tail end of their careers. They're just, they both love farming dearly and are still out there every day, or almost every day. But,
they're only working 4 hours a day.
Yeah, they do what they want to do, and then they're done for the day. So, but they still have that knowledge pool is still there for us if we need them. We can call them up and say, hey, we're having this problem. You ever encountered this? 9 times out of 10, they have. They can offer you some pretty good advice.
Yeah. So now we're moving into the age of how the heck are we going to figure out how to transfer all this knowledge to the next generation, and how the heck are we going to get? Because that's something I think about a lot. When I first came in to this, starting my business, the main goal was to hopefully, bridge the gap and help people understand ag more. And that's still a big part of it. But also another part of it is trying to figure out how the heck are we going to get more people working? Because all these, agriculture companies are touting automation as the answer. It's like, oh, we'll just automate that, or we'll automate that. And yeah, that's going to help. But at the end of the day, there are always going to be things that people need their hands to do. Like I think of the amount of time I've spent in my life, and it's not that much compared to a lot of older guys. For most people my age, I've spent a lot more time fixing or building barbed wire fence, than most people do. You can't automate fixing 100-year-old rusty fence. Like you just can't do that. And so there's always going to need to be people in this industry coming in to replace the older guys. And now we're at the point where it's like, we got to figure out how the heck we're actually going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, there at some level, there's some things that can be automated, and there's just some things that cannot. And the thing about farming, and I know there is going to be, large amounts of the farming sectors that are automated, but I mean, those machines still break, and there's also still there's a tree that falls into the field. I mean, until a machine comes that can remove that tree from the field and pick up every stick that it dropped out, there's going to be need for human labor out there. And, there will be other problems arise in any season that there has to be a human out there to take care of. So the need for labor and knowledge on the farm is not going to get any smaller over the next, generation.
Yeah, so I'm going to do this mostly for Instagram clickbait so people watch this. AI is coming for your job. If you still want a job in the next 20 years that's not going to be replaced by AI, you should go work on a farm or a ranch. If you want a job that you don't need to feel threatened to have your job replaced by a computer, start working with your hands. Learn how to do tasks that are far too either minute for someone to build a machine to do it, like fixing a fence every once in a while, or far too complex for a machine to make the decisions doing. And farming is a wonderful mix of both of those. There is I can't think of any other job on the planet where you have to think and problem solve on such a daily basis as much as farming. Like the amount of things, and every farmer I talk to has the same opinion, or says like they love what they do because it's different every day. There's never a day they show up on the farm and something is the exact same as it was last year. You've got trends and things like harvest season, and most of it's pretty similar. But yesterday you had a draper belt rip off your brand new John Deere combine, and you had to spend all day waiting for parts.
It's always something. I mean, it is. It's something different every day, and there will be a different challenge each and every day on any farm or ranch you're working on. I mean, there's different problems that arise each and every day. You'll be doing a different task each and every day, and it will require a different skill set each and every day. And that's why it also, I mean, it's valuable to have, like if you have 3 or 4 different guys out there on the farm, each guy is going to be talented a little bit differently. We each have different skill sets, even if we all know, broadly similar skill sets. each of us are a little bit better at each thing, So when you have 3 or 4 different people that are skilled in, multiple different skills, there will be a task probably each day that one of those individuals excels in, and it's interesting to watch it. And you're right. I mean, like if you're looking for a job that will challenge you and you won't have to worry about a robot taking, get on the farmer ranch. That robot is not doing all those tasks.
So,
And, I mean, are they going to eliminate some of our tedious tasks? Yes, but are they going to limit every...
And you ask most people, it's not everyone. I enjoy a tedious task every once in a
Sure.
while just to fill my time. But I for one, think super tedious, repetitive tasks, or think like I'm very much a problem solver. I like moving on to the next thing, getting things done,
Yeah.
getting things done. So I have to do something for hours at a time. That's just like, oh, this feels like a waste. Why am I like, especially those ones, it's like either a high school kid needs to be doing this. And it, like, once again, I'll do it if it needs to get done because that's the attitude I want to have towards it. But at the end of the day, it's like, man, at the end of the day, if it needs to get done, I'll do it. But my time would be better spent doing something else.
And I think this is a big thing for farmers right here. Like the guy that he has a family and he has a humongous successful farm. He probably shouldn't be doing the most minutia. He should he should prioritize his skill set to the most important task, and that way his time that he needs to go spend time with his wife to make sure that she's seen him that week, he can use that time for that. He can allot his time, and we should all learn that more. I mean, I should take that.
And yeah, but first of all, preface that I don't want people to think like, oh, you're on your high horse. Like having the willingness to do the job when it needs to get done,
Sure.
but understanding the importance of it. Like Christ is great because he can come mow the lawn once a week, right?
Yeah.
Like it's great that he can get paid to do that. And in high school, that's something that's a good way to make money and is a good use of his time. It's way better for him to mow the lawn than for your dad or you to be mowing the lawn.
Sure, and that's a great example. Like
Which, when for those of you who don't know, they have a lot of grass. It takes a long time to mow. It's not like a quick little like patch of grass. No. It's like hey, this takes several hours.
Yeah,
to mow.
you're gonna be like Christ during the summer, and it's not just one property; it's multiple properties. So you've got a lot of grass to mow. It's a full-time job during the summer, and Christ tries to cram it into his week, and does a great job at it. And, I mean, for him, it is a great job, It allows him he can, schedule his time that he has available and make money for his pickup or whatever he chooses,
But then in 5 years, he might go to trade school or he might go to college and he'll be like, I do this now and I might be better at doing this. And you'll be like, well, yeah, it'd be way better worth your time. We'll find another high schooler who can come on the
Sure.
or your kids will be old enough. So like, all right.
Oh, Daniel, my son's already he already looks up to Christ like, I can't wait till I get big enough like Christ that I can mow the yard. I mean, the kids look up to those, they look up to, they're not quite peers, but they see them almost as peers,
Mm-hmm.
And I think each, those kids that like Christ that come out and work on the farm, they, is Christ going to wind up on the farm? Probably not. He's super intelligent, super hard worker, is going to wind up in a great business or starting his own business somewhere at some point. Mm-hmm. And we've had a lot of people that have come through there like that. And that's what the, at the end of the day, that's what the minimum wage worker is for. He's just starting his skill set. That's the very entry-level skill set position. And you just work up from there. Mm-hmm. As you build your skill set, you can't get paid minimum wage anymore because you'll go to another business that is willing to pay you more for your skill set.
Yeah. So, all right, well, we should probably start wrapping up soon. Yeah, going off that minimum wage thing is like, yeah, if you're a farmer or rancher listening to this and you have employees or you need employees, like they are out there, they do exist. First of all, I just went on a rant about this on LinkedIn this morning. Posts on social media, the amount of messages Neil and I both get, and a lot of them are overseas people, but I get
a lot of Americans too.
There are a lot of people who want to work on farms,
yes,
believe
there
it
is.
or not.
Like I bet I will get at least 5 a day. Like if I'm active on social media, and a lot of weeks I am, I'll get 5 or 6 messages a day. I mean, half of them may be from overseas, but there'll be 3 or 4 from America, and they're not necessarily from Kentucky. They're just from, you know, the United States. They are an American citizen looking for farm jobs. And I'm lucky that I have, my full-time positions are secure. I've got all the guys I need, and I could still use part-time, but I mean, I can't bring somebody from across the country for a part-time job.
Yeah.
So we fill part-time positions usually by friends of ours or word of mouth. And but yeah, like if you're a farmer and rancher and you're in need of labor, yeah, get on social media.
Get on social media and start following people like Neil or myself or the thousands of other Instagram farmers out there. And post, like, get in contact. Guys, it is so shockingly easy to get a hold of people you would never think you could get a hold of. Like, just shoot a message to literally anyone on social media. They could have 100,000 followers, and they'll probably still like at least like or respond to your message. Because I am not a big time Instagrammer by any means, but I get a lot of message that I do try to I make an effort to respond to, even if it's not right away. Like in a week, I might get to your message or something. I'm a busy person, but like there's such a network of people who, if you can't find someone directly, post on your Instagram story, hey, I'm looking for a full-time farmhand. And I'm sure these people know someone. They'll either message you or start reaching out to people. There's so much that you can do. And people want to do, like, that's the thing is like, there are kids who want to be in this industry and they will take a risk to do that. They will take a big risk to do that. It's hard for some businesses to find people because there are a lot of people who have made up their mind, I don't want to work in that industry, or I don't want to do that for sure. There's enough people nowadays, I think, that are curious about agriculture that they would at least want to try their hand in it. So you got to be able to find them. You have to be able to pay them. You can't just, it's 2023, right? 2023. You have to be willing to pay them a livable wage.
Yeah.
And people don't know this. It is illegal to dock pay in the U.S. I know people in the farm and ranch industry who have histories of docking pay of their employees when they mess up. I would never want to work for anyone who...
That would be pretty tough.
Yeah. Like that, like that's one of those things like...
Yeah, I can't imagine Logan driving a semi all day and a tire blowing out on him. That's a $500 tire.
Yeah, and you're just like, all right, well, $500 out of your paycheck now because you weren't looking for that tiny little nail in the road. It's like you have to have a lot of grace with people who've never been in the industry. That's the other thing. Is like be able to pay them at least competently. You don't have to pay them the most. Pay them competently. Have grace when they mess up, and then give them some sort of career path. Say, hey, you might never have a place where you're making a decent livable wage when you have a family. Like this might not be a forever job. For the next few years, like you have a job here, and if things go well on the farm, maybe you have the opportunity to grow into a bigger position here. And then last of all, it's not required, but if you have old farmhouses, I told a buddy of mine this, if you have an old farmhouse that's just sitting around, which you'd be shocked how many old farmhouses are just sitting around. There's a lot. People want I know people who do not rent houses that they own because it's so hard to find good renters in small town America because they'll probably do some sort of drugs or cook some sort of drugs in that house. If you have a property, be willing to offer that as part of the compensation package, because if it's just sitting around, a couple $1,000s in drywall and repairs to make that like a slightly more livable place is nothing on a typical farm's budget. You can refurbish a house for what you spend on fuel during harvest.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that is a great point. Like if you have assets like that and you're looking for labor, I mean, what a great tool to be able to find a good labor on your farm, because that is a need right now. It's good, affordable housing,
And so many people have the property. And that's the other thing too, is like, if I had a decent amount of land and I knew I had a well somewhere on my property and get electricity to it, and I had people wanting to work for me, I'm like, yeah, I might buy a mobile home. I might buy a cheap mobile home or trailer, plop it down. It's one of those things. It's not always the ideal. Obviously, a house would be nicer. It might not be the best investment, but finance-wise, you could totally swing that. And good farm labor, if you can get them to stick around, is like, it is an investment. And so we have to be thinking now way more in I just need an extra hand, I'm busy. You have to start thinking is like, I need to invest in an employee because I cannot do this on my own for a long time. And Neil does a really good job of like actually investing in his employees. I know a lot of people who do just, oh, I need an extra hand, or it's like, oh, they're only gonna be around, they're gonna start, yeah, yeah.
This is where I think people get it wrong with employees. Like, are those employees that you have, like, are they just a warm body, or are they providing you a service that is providing wealth to the farm through their knowledge? So if you have an employee out there that's able to fix something that a John Deere tech could fix, you know, is that making you money? Is he a valuable asset to your farm? Yeah, super valuable.
$170 cheaper an hour
Yeah, people
asset.
don't people don't think about that, and you find guys, I think, you find guys with those quality skill sets that have, either they're a great semi driver, or they're a great welder, or they're a great carpenter, or a plumber, or whatever you might need on the farm. Find guys with those skill sets and be willing to pay them for that skill set, and when you find that type of guy, that guy is going to make you money on the farm. He's not going to cost you money, and that's how you can justify having employees, is if that employee is providing you a service that is actually, if it's a savings or an efficiency, in your business, that employee, your business should make more money because that employee is there, even though it's costing you to pay him out of your pocket. It should be returning dollars to your pocket through those valuable skills.
Not to mention, and I learned this a couple weeks ago, stress, people who are typically stressed, especially about money, or, and money's not always a farm problem, but there is a lot of stress in farming. People who are stressed on average test 15 IQ points lower on IQ tests. That's a big thing for me, is like, I don't, like, at the end of the day, the money always figures itself out. At the end of the day, is like, managing my stress is just as much important. If you can have less stress in your life, that's going to help you make better and smarter decisions going forward. So if you have a guy like Blake, like you've had, it's like, Blake's going to go and he's going to seed all the cover crop, and he's going to seed all the wheat for spring, and he's probably going to do a good job with it. And you don't really have to worry about it. So now you have that whole mental space that you would have had to think about if you weren't doing that.
Yeah, like Blake, like he's, like I hadn't seen him hardly in 2 weeks. He's gone out to seed the wheat and the cover crop, and all I hear from him is if he has a major problem, and it's not, hey, what do I do about this? It's, hey, this is what I've done, I've already contacted the mechanic. I got the parts on the way, or whatever it is, whatever problem he's encountered, he's already taken care of. I don't even have to worry about it. I just know my crop is successfully getting planted, and I can focus on removing the crop that we have in the field currently out of the field. I can focus on my job. He can focus on his. And without people like that, I know just our farm could not be as successful as it is without the guys that we have on our team. Like, each guy has a skill set and multiple skill sets, and they're very valuable to us. And without them, our farm wouldn't be as successful as it is. We can only cover so many bases. Dad and I can, Ultimately, you can only cover so many bases on your farm, and then something is going to get left to the side. So if you have, a valuable laborer there that has that skill set to fill that void, that should put dollars back in your pocket. That's why farm labor is so valuable.
And so that's why also, so moving forward, if you want to get on a farm, I'm going to give you the same advice I gave people who need laborers. Get on social media, get on Instagram, TikTok, or whatever it may be. Start looking for accounts that you could follow that are farmers who might happen to need someone at some point. It's always a tool that you can just start using. It doesn't have to be your life, but it is a valuable tool. Next, if you actually just want to like find someone local, there's agriculture pretty much in every state. And I bet you if you drove an hour and a half in any direction where you live, the chances are you'll probably find someone who has some sort of agriculture presence and might need an extra hand. If you're in high school, hey, can I come, can I come sweep your shop floor, or can I mow your grass, or hey, can you teach me to do this thing and I can help you out with that? Like, there's a lot of guys out there who'd be like, actually, yeah, like I do have some extra cash laying around. That would be helpful, because if you want to be around long term, people know like, hey, we're going to need more people to help with that. So do that. Start learning those skills if you don't have them. If you want to be valuable, like Neil's saying, is like, go get your CDL. It's pretty easy. I don't want to say it's pretty. It's pretty easy to get your truck driver's license. You don't have to have one always for farms, but it's really helpful to be able to just have that truck driving experience. Go get your CDL. Go take a basic diesel mechanics class at your local college. You don't even have to go through a whole program. You can just go take classes like that a lot of time, or you can audit classes for cheaper and just listen to those things, or go to trade school, start learning some hands-on skills. The possibilities are endless. You just have to be willing to take that initiative in the first place to try it. There are a lot of people who need labor, and the best way for you to get involved with that is just to start trying it out and try figuring out how to get there. So there are hiring boards out there for a few of them. Ag Hires is a big one. There's a couple Western ones for the cowboys out there. Yeah. Anyways, there are a lot of opportunities for you out there to get involved. You just have to take that step. So if you have a question, if you're looking for a farm job, get on Instagram, follow us, follow other farmers, go to school, drive around, look for farms, type in farm near you, and chances are you could find maybe some CSA farm or a local garden or something. You can start learning those skills.
They're not hard to find.
Yeah.
Most of these farms now they're noticeable when you drive by them, and almost every one of them is in need of labor.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to come out there and willing.
We're in the age where they're not going to shoot you if you come on their private property.
They're not.
There's enough salesmen out there. You don't have to worry about that.
They're constantly beating.
Just make sure when you introduce yourself saying, I'm not here to sell you anything. That's what I always have to tell people.
I'm here to work.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you just go out there, I think this is the case, especially with my dad, he's one of those guys that he has to see it to believe it, so he's going to be very skeptical of when you come out there. But if he sees that you're willing to try and learn and do, he is fast to jump on and teach, and loves to see young people out. He was so happy to have Christ, and Christ. He came off a message through social media, and we are very skeptical because we get lots of that, and a lot of times they don't pan out. But Christ was great, and my dad was just loved to have him out there, and Christ was so willing to learn and wanted to learn, and I think a lot of the old guys like my dad are like that. They love to have people that are just interested in it, so they can share their knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It's I think there's a lot of older men out there that would be open to teaching.
Yeah.
Just drop by and visit.
Yeah, for all the crotchety old farmers I insulted on this podcast, I know you're not all old and crotchety. I know there's plenty of people, some people have bad days. You can ask my wife. I'm not in a good mood all the time. I'm cranky actually a lot. I'm a very cranky person. But, I try to put on it. I just at least try to be nice to people. I think farmers, especially old guys, I don't
We get a bad rap.
You just don't care anymore. It's what are you going to do? What do you just take my land?
A lot of those old guys, they work by themselves a lot, and have been, they really don't have to please anybody but their wife and themselves. So, they can be a little coarse, but they're actually, most of these guys, I know, farmers in my community, the old guys, they can come off as a little, off-putting, but when you get to know them, they're vibrant personalities and wonderful to know.
Yeah. Just remember, every old guy was once a young guy who used to laugh a lot.
That's right. And he tore stuff up too.
Yeah. Oh, man. They never... Yeah. All right. We're going to end it there. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back in a few weeks. If you want a job, I'm currently still hiring a videographer as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah. Neil's not hiring right now. But if you need a job, go check out Ag Hires. It's my biggest recommendation. They've got a pretty good nationwide presence. And just go find a supporting company. Oh man, you could go work for a co-op, or you could go work for a dealer,
Sure.
and they'll actually train you, and they'll actually give you a career path. And this crazy thing that I've heard is pretty trendy, benefits.
For sure. And and I think if you're just looking, there's a lot of people, a lot of farmers with accounts willing to share, if you are a worker looking to work, message them, and they're willing to share your name around. Mm-hmm. So there's opportunity out there for people that if you're like, hey, I'm interested in coming to the farm.
Yeah. I literally had a guy message me from France earlier who I've talked to before, who needs to do an internship for school. And so he's thought about going through John Deere, but he's also thought about finding a summer harvest crew that's
Sure.
going through and trying to do an internship with a harvest crew. And so now I'm like, all right, well, I should at least give him some options. So now I know he's looking for a job. And at the very least, when I'm talking to other people in the industry, knowing like, hey, there's a guy I know who wants an internship, like, yeah, that's just something that's pretty easy for me to do because I happen to know a guy who's interested in doing stuff like that.
Right.
You know? And it's just little stuff like that.
Sure.
And there's thousands of people on Instagram
There he is.
in the farm community. Thousands. There are so many farm Instagrammers out there. It's crazy.
It is. It's nuts.
I mean,
every farm has an Instagram.
Well, I mean,
Or a lot of them do.
tractors drive themselves now. So, I mean, there's a lot of time to scroll.
There is.
Scroll or watch movies. So,
Can you even farm without Instagram?
no, I don't think so. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll be back next week. Like, subscribe, share, review, do all those things.
Yeah, like, share, subscribe. We appreciate the support.
Yeah. So, yeah, keep following along. We got more coming. So, yeah, thanks for listening, guys.